What's going on, everyone? Welcome in to the Ledge NFL podcast. We're going to be calling it the Goal Line Stand. I'm Zach Hummel. I'm going to be hosting it, and I'm going to be joined by my main man, Cole Little. What's going on, Cole?
Nothing much, man. How are you?
Good. So we had our week one of football. It's finally back. I think everyone's excited. Everyone overreacts to week one events, but we did have some good games. Why don't we start with the Patriots, since it's right in my backyard and a lot of the writers for the site. Game, even as a Pats fan, I thought we had no chance. The Cardinals are a lot of people's Super Bowl favorite. We are without Gronk, Solder, and Vollmer, so are both our tackles and our tight end. We obviously Brady suspended, so we went in there with Jimmy Garoppolo into a hornet's nest in the Arizona Cardinals, which have a great home environment. And they gritted it out. Garoppolo looked good. He hit those check down throws that Brady always hits. Edelman was big. Chris Hogan had a big catch, timely stops on defense, and obviously it helped us that Chandler Catanzaro, screwed up that last-second field goal and hooked it left to give us the victory. You have any takes on that game?
Yeah, I was just as surprised as you were. I honestly wouldn't have been shocked if the Cardinals won that game fairly handily. I mean, this is the first time in a long time that I guess since Kurt Warner was there, that the Cardinals are legitimate Super Bowl candidates. I mean, of course, last year as the season went along, they were considered legitimate Super Bowl candidates, but not necessarily coming into it. So, starting off at home against a big opponent, obviously no Brady. You figured that the Cardinals would come out, guns blazing, but the offense didn't look that good. Carson Palmer didn't look that great. Coming off of an MVP caliber season, you figured he would come out guns blazing as well. But I mean, you gotta give credit to Garoppolo. He looked poised. Clearly the Patriots are in pretty good hands while Brady is still having to suffer with his Deflategate suspension. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty impressive. Like you said, Catanzaro missing that field goal late. Um, he's been a little inconsistent. But overall, the Cardinals, you can't really put it on him necessarily because overall the Cardinals offense didn't really show up that game. But gotta give it to Garoppolo because he was poised from start to finish, and the fact they were able to take that win on the road week one is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I just think the Patriots outcoached the Cardinals. Usually Bruce Arians' teams are pretty prepared, but it seemed like Belichick and McDaniels had a great, scheme for Garoppolo. And even on defense, they're always bend but don't break. And they, let Carson Palmer hit the check downs, but they didn't let the Cardinals get any of those big plays they usually we see John Brown or Michael Floyd and Larry Fitz, who kind of killed them at the end, but they had to dink and dunk to get down the field. So, yeah, definitely impressive for the Patriots. They maybe the team to beat in the NFL. Another game that was pretty interesting was Saints-Raiders. Saints went up early, and then the Raiders made a great comeback on the road in New Orleans. Tough place to play. Derek Carr proved something to me because, everyone coming into the season, everyone thought the Raiders could maybe do something, but they are the Raiders, so you never know when they're going to be good. But Derek Carr led them on the field, and then Jack Del Rio with probably the ballsiest move of the weekend, went for two. And if they didn't get it, they would have lost. And he threw the play that they drew up was a little fade to Michael Crabtree. I don't know if that's their best option, but it worked out. He high pointed the ball and came down with it. What do you think about that move from Del Rio? It took a lot of balls in the week one going on the road and doing the 2-point conversion.
I mean, I can't blame him. He's trying to do whatever he can to get the Raiders back on track and instill a culture change. So, I like the move. I mean, even if it hadn't have worked, I still would have liked to move because they were having no success whatsoever stopping Breeze. But like you said, Derek Carr proved something. I do think the Raiders are legit. Honestly, I really think they could compete for the AFC West title. They can definitely compete for a wild card this year. But yeah, they're in pretty good hands for these next 2 or 3 seasons at least, with Carr and some other good young players they have there. Khalil Mack on defense, but yeah, I mean that was impressive because Breeze looked in midseason form, threw for over 400 yards. Of course, that didn't necessarily make the Raiders' secondary look too good, but kudos to Carr for sticking with it, for hanging right with Breeze, and kudos to Del Rio for that gutsy play call. Because yeah, I mean that wasn't necessarily the most ideal 2-point conversion. Crabtree was lucky to come down with it. It was nearly batted away, but I understand the move because they were having no success. In that second half, holding down Breeze. So I like the move, and who knows, man, that could really change the landscape for the entire Raiders season, really, because that's a huge win. I mean, that was at New Orleans, and they came away with an opening game win, so that could really change the way their entire season turns out.
Yeah, Del Rio never, strike me as a smart coach, even when he was in Jacksonville. But I think that sometimes works in the NFL. I think
Yeah.
some guys overthink it coaching wise. And you just said, I'm going to trust my quarterback and my wide receiver just to make a play. I'm not going to chance it going to overtime. And you can't really fault them for the move. I liked it as well. Even if it didn't work, I'd be like, you know what? They knew they had an opportunity, and Carr came through, which was big. Another game that kind of stuck out. Up here in Connecticut, we have a lot of Giants fans, so everyone was watching this game with the Cowboys, obviously, without Romo. And they pretty much played it even. I thought the Cowboys almost played a better game than the Giants, but Eli drove them down the field, obviously, and they got Victor Cruz at, touchdown with about 2 or 3 minutes left, and then the Terrence Williams play happened where they had 30 seconds on the clock. He had to get out of bounds. He made a cut inbounds. The Cowboys had no timeouts. They didn't have time to get up to the ball. He was definitely in field goal range for Dan Bailey, who was kicking 50-yarders all game. Just a crazy move. Like, obviously the coaching staff told him to get out of bounds, but some of these players have no football IQ. It's just embarrassing to watch sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. Terrence Williams did cost them the game because Dan Bailey's not missing that kick inside of Jerry World. In the waning seconds. I mean, because like you said, he's been as accurate as they come these past few years. So that dumb move did cost the Cowboys what would have been a big win. The game itself was kind of weird. I mean, Dak Prescott, his first career NFL start, obviously, and he threw the ball 45 times. It's kind of strange that, Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, he got bashed a lot after the game for not really doing a whole lot. He scored one big touchdown, red zone rush that provided the Cowboys with a lot of momentum. But other than that, he wasn't very impressive in his first game. So a lot of pressure was placed on the Prescott. But the game itself was strange. 20-19. If you look at the stats, you would figure that a lot more points would have been scored. Good. All three games we've talked about so far are big road victories that could provide huge momentum for teams moving forward. And that's a huge win for the Giants. I mean, of course, going through a coaching change after Coughlin's been there for so long, they're going to look to get back on track and make it back to the playoffs this year. And like you said, Victor Cruz came back. He looked great. He had a couple drives where he was really Eli's main target and leading them down the field. Of course, he'll be able to really compliment Odell Beckham for the first time because he hasn't really been healthy since Odell Beckham burst onto the scene. So that'll be interesting to see how they team up this year. But Giants look pretty good, but overall, yeah, it's hard to let that Terrence Williams move go. I mean, that's just classic Cowboys. They seem to have the worst luck of any team sometimes. And, Prescott, for the most part, played well. Wasn't necessarily the most accurate, but he played pretty well. So you have to kind of feel bad for him and for the rest of the Cowboys for that, how it turned out at the end, because Bailey would have, more than likely hit that field goal and they'd be 1-0. A big win to start off the season.
Yeah, like you said, going on the road in the NFL is so tough. So when you get a win like that over, a pretty good team, that's making a statement week one that this team can win anywhere. The Giants made it, the Patriots made it, and the Raiders made it. And also, think if that play happened to Dez Bryant. I think every NFL pundit on ESPN heads would have exploded if it was Dez Bryant, because started talking about how his head's not in the game, how he's a cancer to the team. But since it was Terrence Williams, there was a little bit of talk about it, but just not as much of it as if it was someone else. So I thought it was interesting how that went down. I think the last game we wanted to touch on too was the amazing comeback at Arrowhead by the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Out of the gate, came out flying. You know, Keenan Allen was going off. Melvin Gordon was scoring touchdowns, which he didn't do last year. They went up 24-3. Keenan Allen tore his ACL. I had him on my fantasy team, and I was, that was one of the worst feelings ever. He couldn't even make it out of the first half of the first game. And the Chargers offense definitely took a hit there. They couldn't do anything in the second half, and the Chiefs came all the way back to beat them, coming back from 24-3 to end up winning the game. I just think, a lot of people peg this Chiefs team to be, if not in the AFC Championship game, definitely in the, the divisional round. So I think it was an important win for them. They fought back, and they kind of showed that they can bounce back, even versus a bad Chargers team at home. After a disappointing first half, they did come back, which showed some fight, which you don't always see from Andy Reid-led teams. I thought it was a good win for them, even though they didn't play that great in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, the game itself was shocking. I mean, a lot of people, coming into the season talked about the possibility that the Chiefs could have the best defense in football. The AFC at the very least this season, and they looked awful in the first half. Phillip Rivers was going up and down the field at will. But yeah, it's just like something clicked in the second half. I think that was the biggest comeback, at least regulation comeback in Chiefs history. Alex Smith looked poised, something that you can't always say for him, but he looked poised, leading them, in their comeback. But I mean, this is a huge year for the Chiefs. I mean, this is it. This is like their window is wide open right now, and I'm not sure how much longer it'll be open. But this is the year for them. They won. Obviously, they won a first-round playoff game this past season. Didn't have Jamal Charles for the bulk of the season, but they're going to get him back here in the near future, and they still basically have all the same guys from that beastly defense, minus Justin Houston, who's going to miss a fair chunk of the early part of the year, but he'll be back eventually. So this is the year for the Chiefs, and that it was looking like it was going to be a really disappointing start to the year, getting blown out at home by a divisional rival, the Chargers. But you got to wonder how that Keenan Allen injury affected San Diego. Like you said, that was pretty demoralizing. He's coming off signing that big contract. He had 6 catches prior to getting hurt in the game. So no telling how many he would have ended up with. And it's a shame because, he's a great receiver, but he just can't really ever seem to stay fully healthy. So it's a shame he's already suffered that major. It's a shame for the Chargers as well, but, because that pretty much nixes their playoff hopes probably. But as for the Chiefs, yeah, that was a big win. Great play calling. Of course, they didn't have the services of Jamal Charles, but Spencer Ware, who was filling in, was great, both in the rushing department and the receiving department. So, they did what it took. I mean, they did what it took to win. Only gave up 6 points in the second half, and they got a huge win in overtime. Alex Smith led them on a great touchdown drive. So that's a big win. I mean, that's another huge momentum win. Even though this one was at home for Kansas City, it's still, basically the same as winning a huge game on the road because they had to come back from so much. So that'll be a huge momentum carrier for them moving forward. And, we'll have to see. I mean, like you said, a lot of people feel like the Chiefs could possibly compete for the Super Bowl, which is something that hasn't been said in a very long time. But that was a big win for them, and kudos to Alex Smith because he looked great in the second half.
Yeah, it's so crazy. After week 1, we make these harsh generalizations, but literally the Chargers season is over because of that Keenan Allen injury. And that's they worked for 4 months coming up to these games, and one little cut. It was a non-contact injury, and the guy's gone. And the Chargers season's over. It's just crazy how that works. I think we're going to jump into our segments now. We have a couple segments set up here. I think we're going to start with best and worst of the weekend, where we'll, it can be a play, it can be a game, it can be, something funny that happened during one of the games. why don't you start with your best, and I'll do my best, and then we'll do our worst. So what was your best of the weekend?
Well, there was a lot to pick from. There really was. I mean, we just went through all those big games, all those big wins. My best of the weekend, I'm gonna have to give some props to AJ Green, because he was unbelievable. 12 catches, 180 yards, and a huge touchdown. But what made it so epic is that he was going up against who many people claim to be the best corner in the league, Darrelle Revis. He was targeted 12 times, and he caught it all 12 times. Andy Dalton had a perfect passer rating when going to him. He was. I mean, a lot of the times he burned Revis on some various seam routes going down the field. I mean, he was wide open a lot, so it definitely made Revis look bad. But that was huge because I mean Green. The Bengals lost a couple of receivers in the offseason. Of course, they have the rookie Tyler Boyd, but Green's going to be looked to really step it up this year. Um, I mean, of course, he's been great. He's been a Pro Bowler, I think, every year of his career. But he's going to have to be the man game in and game out. With this offense, because this is the year for the Bengals. I mean, they have to finally do something in the playoffs this year, or else Marvin Lewis is probably gone. Andy Dalton might be gone. So kudos to him. I mean, the Bengals got a huge win, winning by 1 point due to the last-minute field goal by Mike Nugent. But winning at the Jets, that's a big way to start off the season because the Jets are probably going to be pretty good this year. They're definitely looking to make some noise to get into the playoffs and make some noise. So congratulations to Green, because I mean we hear a lot about Revis Island and Revis. He seemed to mouth off a lot to top receivers and fellow DBs in recent years. So that Green definitely made him look bad, but he carried the team on his back and helped the Bengals get a huge Week 1 win.
Yeah, that was a big win for the Bengals because the Jets kind of outplayed them that whole game, but those big plays by AJ Green definitely helped them. My best of the weekend, I'm going to go to a rookie quarterback. I'm going to go to Philadelphia and Carson Wentz. Obviously, he has red hair, so I'm obviously going to love him. Him and Andy Dalton. I didn't think his performance was that great, but he did have 2 TDs, almost 300 yards. The Eagles don't really have a lot of weapons around him. It was the Browns they're playing, but it looks like he's got a lot of pocket presence, which is what, I've watched Tom Brady all these years. He's not the most mobile guy, but he just loves to move up in the pocket, slide a little bit, and still steps into his throws. And I saw that with Wentz. It really impressed me. And, it's crazy how the Eagles got killed for trading up to get him. The Rams traded up to get Goff, and the Eagles traded up to get Wentz. But Goff, people are already writing him off with the Rams, and he's third on the depth chart. And then Wentz starts for the Eagles after he was injured in the preseason, and he looks like he's never missed a step, and he looks like one of the new bright young quarterbacks in this league. I just think it's great for Philadelphia. Coming out of North Dakota State really proves that you can go anywhere, but as long as you play and prepare and you have the talent, you'll be found. So I just thought it was a good story that Wentz looks like he's going to be a legit quarterback. So we'll have to follow how he in the NFL, because his first game was definitely pretty impressive from a rookie quarterback, especially in this NFL. So what'd you have for your worst of the weekend now?
Oh my goodness. Once again, a lot to pick from. I mean, I feel bad about saying this is my worst because it involves a player getting hurt, but I'm just going to have to go with the Browns. I mean, there's a good chance that something to do with the Browns will be my worst of the weekend a lot this year. I mean, this was finally there was finally some positive hype for the Browns coming into the season. They get RG3. He has a coach who's willing to buy into him, and Hugh Jackson, who obviously had a lot of success. His offensive coordinator with Cincinnati finally got a new head coaching gig at the Browns. It's supposed to be the year that they turn it around. And then what happens? RG3, he doesn't look great to start, and then he suffers a freak shoulder injury. This resulted in him being put on injured reserve. And they just look awful going up against Wentz. I mean, like you said, kudos to Wentz for having that big game. But, I mean, he wasn't even – like if they hadn't traded – if Teddy Bridgewater hadn't torn up his knee, resulting in the Eagles trading Sam Bradford, Wentz wouldn't even have been starting in that game. It probably would have been Bradford, maybe Chase Daniel. But this is a guy that a week, not until a week heading into the game, he didn't even know he was going to be starting, and he looks phenomenal. The Browns look pathetic. I actually thought the Browns would get that win because I actually bought in. I was foolish enough to buy in, but yeah, the Browns look terrible on all fronts. Their defense looked awful. Their offense was practically non-existent. Of course, not having Josh Gordon due to suspension hurt, but I mean, it's just sad, man, because the Browns, it's like no matter what they do, they're always going to be the worst. I mean, it's been this way for a handful of seasons now. They're just down on their luck no matter what they do. I thought bringing in RG3 was going to be a really smart move. Now they're going to have to go back to old man McCown. So, who knows? They may end up being the worst team in the league this year when a lot of people thought that maybe they'd compete for a wild card spot, including myself, this season. But, terrible way to start off the year. And I'm sure it'll just get worse from here.
I can't believe you thought they'd be a wild card team. They're the Cleveland Browns. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same stuff every season. I think they might be better with McCown though at the helm at quarterback than RG3. To be honest, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just can't. The whole RG3 situation in Washington, like if Shanahan, I still blame Shanahan for playing him when he was dealing with that knee issue his rookie season. I can't help but feel like if he hadn't torn up his knee in that playoff game, torn it up really badly after he was already dealing with some issues, who knows where we would be? Because I mean, he looked like he was the next big thing his rookie year. He definitely outplayed Andrew Luck. And I just feel bad for how things turned out in Washington. I thought maybe he would come into Cleveland and redeem himself, show the old RG3. But I mean, God, he's already on injured reserve, and the Browns' season is up in the air. Like, I don't know, man. I just thought, the AFC, a lot of question marks coming into the season. I thought maybe they'd give it a go. I thought they probably end up around 500, compete for maybe that last wild card spot, but clearly not. So I can't help but make them my worst because I mean, I'm sure it'll just get worse from here because they're the Browns. So
Yeah, RG3. I mean, even if he didn't get injured in that playoff game that you're talking about with Shanahan, the guy's just so fragile. It would have happened
yeah,
eventually. So my worst of the weekend, I'm just going to go with the whole game. I'm just going to go with the 49ers-Rams late Monday night game. I mean, I stayed up to watch it. I turned it off at halftime. Thank God I didn't miss anything. There was nothing going on in that game. When the 49ers put up 28 points on you, that's pretty sad, even though they're running Chip Kelly's offense up-tempo. The Rams they're just an embarrassment. I followed them through Hard Knocks, and you start to realize that these coaches, they tell these players all this stuff, and they're really idiots. They use all cliches. Jeff Fisher has no idea what he's doing. I just don't think they know what they're doing as an organization. Jared Goff is third string. Let the kid play. I mean, Chase Keenum. If you're going to have a bad season, at least let the rookie quarterback, get some experience, because that's what a lot of teams are doing nowadays. These guys come from college and NFL systems. Play the kid and let him play. I just thought that whole game was embarrassment, but especially the Rams putting up a 0 on opening night is not a good look, and especially with them moving to LA, they're not going to gain too many fans with their performance. So it'll be interesting to see how they move forward. I think Jared Goff will be seeing some playing time sooner rather than later on that front. If not, Jeff Fisher will be on the hot seat this year. So we'll keep an eye on that. Next, we'll do our top 5 power rankings. We'll do this every week as the games go. So teams will be coming in and coming out of our top 5. You want to give your top 5 first, Cole?
yeah, sure. It was actually fairly difficult. I mean, of course, we only have like a week to go off of. I'm gonna have to say Patriots won. I mean, they were like my, in my mental power rankings I did in my head coming into the season. I predicted that the Patriots would win it all. I think Brady will come back and be angry and just, lead them to world domination or whatever. But I'll have to have them at 1. Number two was difficult because honestly, I ended up going with the Broncos because how could you not? I mean, I was very impressed with their performance on both sides of the ball against the Panthers. I expected them to get beat pretty handily in that game, honestly, and of course they came away with the win. But it was hard putting them at two because honestly, I wasn't even sure that they would make the playoffs this season, honestly, with that quarterback situation. I mean, they're starting that guy from Northwestern nobody's ever heard of. But that defense looks just as good as it was last year. Simeon played fairly well. C.J. Anderson played well. I mean, they still have two great receivers in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, so who knows? So I'll go with them at two. Three, I'll actually go with the Steelers. That defense, that secondary especially looked a little suspect against the Redskins last night. But the offense looked amazing. And, of course, no Le'Veon Bell, no Martavis Bryant. Big Ben looks great. Of course, he dealt with a couple different injury issues last year, so I'm sure he's happy to really have a clean slate and a full season ahead of him. Antonio Brown obviously looked incredible, and that was a big win. I mean, the offense looked incredible. D'Angelo Williams looked great, so I'll have to go with them at three. Four was pretty tough. I ended up going with the Packers. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were underwhelmed by that performance against the Jaguars, but the thing is, I do think the Jaguars are better than a lot of people probably realize. I don't necessarily think they're going to make the playoffs, but I mean, they're definitely in good hands for these next couple of years at least with Blake Bortles. He looked pretty good, and the Packers were able to take one in what was a pretty hard-fought contest in Week 1. That was on the road for the Packers too, and they're needless to say they're going to be solid this year. So I'll go with them at 4 and 5. Even though the offense didn't look great. And even though it took a last-minute touchdown for them to beat the Dolphins, I'll go with the Seahawks. Coming into the season, I figured that they would be the NFC champs and would fall to the Pats in the Super Bowl yet again. But I'll go with them at 5 because it was just Week 1. Russell Wilson actually looked good. He had great stats, but they just struggled on Miami's side of the field. They couldn't really put any points on the board. Only ended up winning 12-10, but the defense looked awesome. They came away with a big win. Russell Wilson was poised at the end of the game, so I'll go with them at 5.
Yeah, mine are pretty similar. Obviously, it's Week 1, so a lot of the good teams won, and they'll be in the top 5. I obviously had the Patriots won. They go into Arizona, who's a Super Bowl favorite, as we mentioned earlier, with a backup quarterback, no Gronk, no left or right tackle, and they won. If not for that LeGarrette Blount fumble in the third quarter, I think they would have won even easier than they did. Just an impressive win by Belichick and co. 2, I'm going to go Steelers because I'm really high on the Redskins. So I think the way that they moved the ball versus that team, and their offensive line looks so good. They looked, their size is really imposing. They swallowed up a lot of the Redskins D-line, and obviously with Big Ben, he's one of my fantasy quarterbacks, and I just think he's such a great player. Even without, as we mentioned earlier, Wheaton was injured, Bryant was injured, Bell's out. I just think they're a horse, and I think them and the Patriots are the class of the AFC. I'm going to mix it up here. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals at 3. I just think, playing in New York versus the Jets on Week 1 is pretty tough, and, the Jets do have weapons on both sides of the ball, and for the Bengals to come out of that road game with a win, Week 1, I think says a lot. They'll probably end up getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs like they always do, but
they definitely will. They definitely will.
after week 1 and that win, as I said, I put a lot of stock in road wins, so they'll be my third team. So right now I have Patriots, Steelers, Bengals. 4, I'll go Packers. Like you said, wasn't that impressive, but Jacksonville is better than most people think. When you have Aaron Rodgers under center, you got to put them in the top 5 just on that alone. I think their defense will improve as they get healthier down the season. 4, I'm going to go – oh, no, that was my 4th. So 5th, I'm going to go with – see, this is a tough one. A lot of the teams that I would have picked lost, like Carolina and Arizona,
Hmm.
I'm gonna go with the Broncos. I was not impressed by them in their win versus Carolina because I think Carolina's a little overrated. Um,
Okay.
I think their defense is getting worse. I don't think they have a ton of weapons on offense, but the Broncos did win. C.J. Anderson ran. If they can have that formula for Trevor Siemian having a great running game with Anderson, I think that'll suit them well. And their defense looks, not as good as last year, but still top 5 in the league. So you got to put them up there. I thought the AFC teams looked better. You got the Patriots, Broncos, Bengals, Steelers in my top 5, and only one NFC team. So the NFC has a lot of parity, while the AFC is looking a little stronger as a conference. So we'll see how the playoffs shake out. If that kind of continues, that trend continues into this uh, season. So I think we'll skip fantasy duds since we're gonna have a fantasy podcast that Steven and Justin are gonna do. We'll let them handle that kind of stuff. Uh, we're gonna do an upset pick every week. We'll keep track of our records. You gotta pick a dog, at least a 3-point underdog coming into this week. Someone you think that can surprise people in a game that maybe people thought they would have lost. Um, We'll start it with week 2. We'll keep track of our records. So who are you going with week 2? We won't pick the same game. So whatever you go with, I'll go with a different one. Who do you got with an upset win in week 2?
Well, there are a few different attractive upset options, but as far as a big one, a somewhat substantial one, there aren't a whole lot of big underdogs. But I've seen that Indianapolis in a lot of different places is considered a 6 or 7 point underdog to the Broncos. It's at Denver. I do think Indianapolis will get that win, even though I just said I was impressed with the Broncos having number 2 in my power rankings. But I do think the Colts will get that win. Indy's defense looked putrid against Detroit, but their offense, Andrew Luck looked pretty good for 385 yards, 4 touchdowns. Can't really put that loss on him. The Broncos, I was blown away by their win against Carolina. I didn't expect that to happen, but the defense is great, but I'm not really sure how much longer that the Simeon project will continue to turn out in Denver's favor. So I do think the Colts will get that win. I don't know what it is. The Andrew Luck seems to be able to have his way with Denver. I'm not really sure what that is. Maybe not. Peyton Manning's not there. There won't be that added extra motivation, but I still think they'll come into Denver and get a big win. I can't imagine they'll start 0-2 because this is a huge year for Indianapolis. Andrew Luck, basically a lost season for him last year. Pagano, you have to imagine he's still kind of on the hot seat. So this is a big year for them. They're playing in that weak division, even though Jacksonville is on the rise, so they're going to have to up their game. But you got to figure they're going to want to return as AFC South champs, and starting off 0-2 in the NFL is never good because, like you said, the AFC seems to have a handful of elite teams, so it won't be good for the Colts to fall behind. And Houston looked surprisingly good in Week 1. Jacksonville, even they lost, looked surprisingly good. So I do think they'll steal one from Denver, in Denver.
Yeah, that's definitely one I looked at too. I just think whenever you have a good quarterback on the road, you have a shot, and they have the better quarterback in that game. So Cole is going with the Colts over Denver in Denver. I'm going to go with a game that we talked about earlier, a team that we talked about earlier. I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons over the Oakland Raiders in Oakland. Oakland opened up as a 6-point favorite. The sharps are on it, so it's being bet down to -5, -4. I think Atlanta, even though they lost in Week 1 to Tampa Bay, they have the offense. Their defense is putrid. They give up way too many yards. Jameis Winston slashed and dashed them. The Buccaneers look like one of the best teams in the NFC, just if you just looked at that game alone. I think Atlanta will recover on the road. Julio Jones suffered a little bit of an injury, so it'll be interesting to see if he plays. I just think the Oakland hype is a little high. The Saints weren't expected to really do anything this season. Their defense is Swiss cheese. The fact that Oakland took them down to the last second, and had to win on a 2-point conversion by Jack Del Rio. I just think they're getting too much respect after one game, and I think Atlanta is the better team overall, talent-wise. It will be crazy in the black hole that game because Oakland's finally good, so hopefully their fans come out. But I just think Atlanta with Matt Ryan wins that game. Should be a close one. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons over Oakland, and you have the Colts over Denver. So we'll keep track of that. We'll see who has, the more upset picks this season. I think that's it. So unless you got anything else, Cole, I think we'll wrap it up for the first episode.
Sounds good. Looking forward to week 2.
Yeah, week 2. Football is back. So we'll see how these teams, come back after week 1 and week 2. And we'll watch SportsCenter all week to see how people overreact to all the, week 1 results. So, all right.